Alright guys, this is unit, what are we on, 5 here, and we are now on lesson 4, I believe, right? Today's objective is we will be learning how to divide polynomials. Okay? Alright, so here's the first thing I want you guys to do. I want you to pause the video here and I want you to do this division problem. Take about 1 minute. Okay, so the reason I'm giving you this is because hopefully if you guys know how to do your long division with just numbers, that will help you understand how to do long division with polynomials. So here's what we know. We know that the number that comes first goes under this little bracket here. And we know that this number here goes in front. And then what we do is we ask ourselves, how many times does this number go into this number? And the answer is once, right? Now 1 times 5 leaves me with 5, right? So I'm going to put my 5 right here, and then we subtract the 5 from the 6, and we get 1. And then we bring down our 18, and the process repeats. But I want you guys to notice the steps there, because those steps are going to be the same when we do polynomials. First, you ask yourself, how many times does this go into this? So we'll call that divide, right? And then we multiply that number times 5 and put it here. So we'll call that multiply. So we divide, multiply, and then subtract, bring down the next number. So it's divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. Let's repeat. So now we continue. So we see 5 divided into 18 is 3. Then we do 3 times 5, which is 15. Then we subtract. Then we bring down and repeat. Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, repeat. In this case, we're done because there's nothing else to bring down. So what we do then is we write our answer. Our answer is this number here plus the remainder over the divisor. So it's 136 and 4/5. Okay, and so that is how we do long division. We're going to be doing something very similar today, but with polynomials. Okay, now why are we doing this? Well, in this class, we're not going to be doing anything with it. I just want to make sure you guys have the skill. But the purpose of this is to help us factor, which for those of you guys that move on into pre-calculus in the future, it helps you with factoring more complicated types of polynomials. So that's why we're learning this. All right, so first I want you guys to go ahead and write down this problem. So pause the video here. Okay, so let's remember those steps, right? Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. Let's set it up first. So first of all, do our little bracket. The one that comes first goes underneath of the bracket. And the one that comes second goes in front. Now what we do is we first of all try to make this number divide this number into this number. Okay? Now, when it comes to polynomials, instead of saying divide, I'm just going to ask you, what would you have to multiply this by to get this number? So think about that for a minute. What would you multiply x by to get 6x to the third? The answer is 6x squared. Now you can actually do some division if you're having trouble figuring that out mentally. You can just take that number, 6x cubed, and you can divide it by x. The x on the bottom takes away one of the powers on the top, and you're left with that, right? So you can just do some basic division. So we divide first, so that's what that is. And then we multiply. So now you're going to take this number, you're going to multiply it by both of those numbers, both this time. Not just the x, but also the 1. So what is 6x squared times x? The answer is 6x cubed. What is 6x squared times 1? The answer is 6x squared. Draw a line. And what do we do after that? We subtract. Okay, so minus, minus. Those cancel. 3 take away 6 is negative 3x squared. So we have gone through all of our steps here, right? We divided x into 6x cubed and got this. Then we multiplied it. We put it here and subtracted. And now we bring down the next term and we repeat. So now we ask ourselves, what do we multiply the x by? Different color this time. What do we multiply the x by to get this? Or in other words, what is this divided by x? What would you multiply x by to get that? Well, first of all, we need it to be a negative 3, right? Also, what would have to do the x to get x squared? Well, we need another x, right? So I would multiply x by negative 3x to get negative 3x squared. All right. After we do the division there, now we take this number and we multiply it by both of these. So negative 3x times x gives me negative 3x squared. Negative 3x times 1 gives me negative 3x. What do we do after we multiply? We subtract. Now this is an interesting thing, so pay close attention to this. Notice how they're already negative? So if I subtract, what happens? They become plus, because when you subtract a negative, it's like adding. Those cancel, and this makes negative 5x. Bring down the next number, and continue. All right, so here we go. I want to divide x into negative 5x. Or in other words, what would I multiply x by to get negative 5x? And the answer is negative 5. After you divide x into negative 5x, we take that negative 5 and we multiply it by both terms. And that gives us negative 5x minus 5. And then we subtract. And once again, when you subtract negatives, they become positives. This cancels, and then negative 6 plus 5 makes negative 1. And at that point, that's my remainder. Okay? So here's my answer. It's 6x squared, right? Minus 3x minus 5, plus my remainder, which is negative 1, over my divisor, x plus 1. So, if you guys were taking multiple choice test, this is what you would be, the answer you'd be trying to find. Okay? So that's how you divide polynomials. It's exactly the same as dividing numbers. It's just a little more complicated because the x's and stuff were all over the place. Okay? So, we're going to do another one now, and this time it's going to be more of a guided practice. It's going to be you guys doing one thing at a time. We'll pause the video, and you guys can take a minute to do each step, and then you'll check your answer after each one. It is tedious, it is long, but if you guys participate with it, you'll find that after this guided practice, it should be a little bit easier. Now, before I move on to the next one, though, I want to point out something. Do you guys notice the negative here? Sometimes you'll find that they'll take that negative and they'll scoot it down here. And so the plus becomes a negative. So anytime your front number on the top is a negative, they might factor that out and then put it right there on the side instead. Okay? Anyway, let's go ahead and do a guided practice. So go ahead and write down this problem, please. Pause the video for you. Okay, now before you guys start working on this one, if you have started working, you might want to erase and wait and just keep up with me here. I'm going to show you guys something that's a little bit different on this one. Both of these polynomials are missing a term. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but on this last problem that we had, let me go back a little bit. Before we begin the guided practice, I have something else I want to share with you about this. Bring all this stuff back real quick. I don't know if you guys noticed this on this last problem though, but did you notice how it just so happened that the x to the thirds lined up and the x to the squareds lined up? Did you notice how the squares lined up and the x's? Every time the like terms were lining up perfectly for us to combine. Well, that wasn't coincidence. The reason everything was lining up is because when they gave us the problem, they had every term present and they were in order. If your polynomial is not in order or if it's missing some terms, then you're going to have a problem with lining up your like terms. So notice this. We have a fifth power here, a fourth power, a third power, a first power, think of that as a 1, and then that's like x to the 0 because there is no power. Which one are we missing? 5, 4, 3, 1. Well, we're missing the 2, aren't we? So there's no place for the x squareds. We need to make sure that they have a place. So I'm going to rewrite this, and so that I have an x squared, I'm going to put an x squared, but I don't really want it to have any value, so I'm going to put a 0 in front of it. So if you ever have a missing term, you have to insert it with a 0 in the front. How about this one here? X squared minus 1. It's missing a term as well. It goes from a power of 2, and there's no x at all here, so that's like a power of 0. So if I'm going from a power of 2 to a power of 0, I'm missing the power of 1. So I need to put an x to the first power in there, so I'll put 0x. Okay, so you have to have placeholders in there. Otherwise, your terms won't line up the way they should. All right, so now that I've added that new little piece of information for you, now I want you guys to go ahead and do the first step. Your first step is to go ahead and just put it under the brackets. So pause the video and see if you guys can set this thing up appropriately. Okay, so the first one is what was supposed to go under the bracket. My goodness, that's a long one. And then your second one is what was supposed to go in front of the bracket. Okay, so I made this one a little bit longer so that we can get a few opportunities for you guys to practice. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin. The first step is to figure out how many times does this go into this, and you guys are going to put your answer right here. So pause the video and see if you can figure that out. All right, so x squared goes into x to the fifth, x cubed times. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to multiply that number times all three of these, and then you're going to put your answer there underneath the first three terms. So go ahead and do that. Pause the video. Okay, so x cubed times x squared gives me x to the fifth. X cubed times 0x, well, 1 times 0 is just going to be 0. And then x cubed times x gives me x to the fourth. And then x cubed times 1 gives me x cubed. All right, signs there. Next, we're going to subtract, and then you're going to write your answer underneath of it. Okay? So go ahead. So first of all, if we subtract, it goes minus, minus, and minus. These two go away. This one is negative 3x to the fourth. This one, this is a 1 here, right? So 2 take away 1 is 1x cubed. Then you bring down the next term. And now we repeat. Okay? So, walk you through it a little bit. I want to see how many times does this go into this, and you're going to put your answer here. Now this time I want you guys to go ahead and see if you can do the whole thing to the next, well, not finish the entire problem, but I want you guys to figure out what goes here, and here, and here. So 3 blanks for you guys to fill in. Go for it. This will probably take you a little longer, so go ahead and pause the video for probably like a minute or so, or 2 minutes. Okay, so x goes into 3x to the fourth negative 3x cubed times. Then we take that and we multiply that by all of the terms in the front. So I'm going to take my x cubed, oops, I erased it. I'm going to take that, we're going to multiply it by all 3. Okay, so negative 3x cubed times x squared. Uh-oh, I had a boo-boo. It's not cubed, it's 2. Sorry about that. Anyway, negative 3x squared times x squared gives me negative 3x to the fourth. Negative 3x squared times 0x gives me 0x cubed. And then negative 3x squared times 1 gives me negative 3x squared. After that, you guys should have subtracted all these. So when you subtract a negative, it becomes plus. So those two become pluses. This goes away. 1 take away 0 is 1x cubed. 0 plus 3 is 3x squared. And then we bring down the 4x. All right, go ahead and see if you can find your next 3 blanks. Okay, so now you guys are going to find what goes here, here, and here. Pause the video, go for it. Okay, so we were supposed to be finding what would I multiply x squared by to get x cubed, and the answer would be x. So multiplying the x by all 3 of these terms would give me the following. That x cubed plus 0x squared plus x. And then we were supposed to go through and subtract everything. So subtract, subtract, subtract. Okay? So this goes away. This is 3x squared plus 3x. And then we should have brought down our negative 1. And we're ready to repeat again. All right, one more time for you guys to practice, and then we're done with this one, and I'll explain why this one stops. So go ahead and try one more time. Okay, so x squared goes into 3x squared 3 times. And if I multiply this 3 by all 3 of those terms, we end up with 3x squared plus 0x plus 3. Guess we don't really need the pluses because we're going to go through and subtract anyway. So that's going to be minus, 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 minus. This goes away, and I'm left with 3x minus 4 as my remainder there. Now, why are we done? How do we know when we're actually done? And this is kind of important for you guys to know. Take a look at this power right here. That's a power of 2. Now look at the power of our remainder here. The first one is 3x to the first. When this power is bigger than your remainder's power, then you're all done. You don't need to go any further. Okay? So here's our final answer. We have this, right? It's x cubed minus 3x squared plus x plus 3. Then we do plus, right? And you're going to put your remainder, which was 3x plus 4, or was it minus 4? Minus 4, over your divisor. But when you write your final answer, you don't use the 0. That was just so all of our terms would line up over here. So we don't need the zeros in our final answer. It wouldn't be wrong if you included it, but on a multiple choice test, you just wouldn't see it, so it would probably confuse you to leave it. But there's your answer. So that's what we would get if we divided this polynomial by this. Now, this takes a long time because we're just learning it, but as you practice, hopefully it'll be able to speed up a little bit. So here's what we've done so far then. We've done a teacher example where I did the whole thing. We did a guided practice where you did piece by piece, gradually more and more. And now you guys are ready to try a whole problem on your own. Okay? Now, the first thing I want you guys to do, though, before you begin, I want you to rewrite both of, well, this one does not need to be rewritten. But I want you guys to rewrite this because it is missing a term. So go ahead and copy it, pause the video, rewrite that, and then push play. Make sure you got it written right, and then we'll begin the division. So this is what you guys should have written. We're missing a square again. So I had to put a 0x squared in there, right? So now I would say pause the video. I'm going to give you guys about 5 minutes. I want you guys to try to do this entire problem here. See if you can take it all the way to the end and write your final answer out. Okay? And that'll conclude us for the day when you're done. But after 5 minutes, push play and I'll show you the final answer.